of us at HeadHunt. We are expecting more people to sign in, so just give us a couple of seconds more before we begin. Well, today we are having a lunch and learn session, so please feel free to enjoy your lunch as we learn along. And speaking of food, today's topic is about sustainable eating. So without further ado, let's tuck in. Welcome to our Brown Bag series, brought to you by HeadHunt in partnership with James Cook University. My name's Tammy. Broadcasting live at LLI, we have with us Professor May Tan-Mullins, who will be sharing with us on the topic of sustainable eating for future Singapore. Before I hand over the time to May, please note that there is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to type in your questions at any time during the presentation. We'll also be conducting our feedback poll at the end of the session, so please stay with us throughout. Without further ado, I'll now pass the time to Prof. May. Prof. May, over to you, please.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is May Tan-Mullins. I'm the Dean International at the James Cook University, Singapore. Today, I'm going to talk about sustainability, which is something that I live by and really, truly support and believe in. I'm going to talk about sustainable eating for the future Singapore. Could you put on the slides, please? Thank you. So very quickly, I'm just going to highlight the key takeaways that's going to happen today. Can I remove the recorded button, please? Because it's covering my slides. Use a clicker, I'm sorry. Yep. All right. Very quickly. So today, this is the takeaway. I'm first going to define what is food security, food loss, and food waste. Then I'm going to talk a little bit in terms of the supply side, which is sustainable agriculture, and followed by the demand side, which is very relatable to us, sustainable eating. And then I'm going to talk a bit in terms of what are the challenges for Singapore and what does it mean for us Singaporeans. Finally, the key takeaway I would say is really what can we do as individuals? And then we'll open up for the Q&A as well. As you can see from the picture, Singapore ranks as the first most secured nation on the Global Food Index in 2018. Later in the slide, I'm going to tell you a bit more why are we ranked the most food secure nation of the world. Before we start the lecture properly, just very quickly, I want us to think a little bit in terms of how often do we eat at hawker centers and coffee shop. I hope most of you now are eating at home, make your own lunch, or you could be listening in from your office with a takeaway from hawker centers and coffee shop. If you eat often at these places, then obviously you kept up with the news recently that a lot of the Singapore hawkers prices are going up. And it is very challenging for especially the lower income family with the increasing food prices. So we can see, food prices is really impacting on all of us in terms of our way of living. So just go through very quickly, what do we mean by food security? It is quite an important concept. It exists when all people at all times have access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food to meet your daily supplies and needs. And of course, your food preferences for an active and healthy lifestyle. Another international organization, the World Health Organization, actually defined food security on 3 pillars. The first is food availability, where sufficient quantities of food available on a consistent basis. So supply chain has a lot to deal with it. And again, we can talk a bit more later in terms of how supply chain is impacting on the food availability. The second pillar then is food access, is to have sufficient resources to obtain appropriate food for a nutritious diet. So hawker prices, in fact, will impact on our food access. Can you imagine if our chicken rice increased to $10 a plate? That is very difficult for us to buy chicken rice every day because it impacts on our food ability to access the food that we want to eat. The last pillar then is food use, where appropriate use based on the knowledge of basic nutrition and care, as well as adequate water and sanitation. So with this, we see energy and water prices going up as well. I just received my SP bill. I was like a big shock. I was like, oh my God, what just happened? This month, in fact, if you look carefully at the prices, I believe there's a 20 to 30% increase in your energy and water prices. And this naturally will impact on our food prices because we need energy and water to cook food and process food. Food security, however, is not just 3 pillars and by the definition that I've just mentioned. It is an extremely complex issue. We're going to talk a bit why and how. This is one of the professors that I really admire very much in terms of he's trying to put a more consistent way of understanding food security. And he said food security involves many, many elements such as, you can see here, in terms of land grab, population increase, climate change, all these will impact on food security, how secure you can quickly get your food and the types of food that you want. I'm not going to go through everything because there's a lot of factors here, as you can see, that will impact on food security. Keeps going, keeps going. We're going to talk a bit about food waste, and wars and conflicts as well. Imagine if you're in Ukraine, with the Russia war, how do you get food? In fact, you can't because of the lockdown of the place as well as the block of the roads. There's no supply chain to bring food to you. So these are the challenges that will impact on food security. So very quickly, then, how do we resolve these factors that impacting our food security? These green boxes that you're seeing here are ways, and processes and policies that different government, different key stakeholders have put in place to improve our food security. Free trade, for example, is a very good one. Having free trade means that countries can actually, trade goods quite freely without high tariffs. And as a result, Singaporeans like us, we get cheaper blueberries, cheaper and fresher beef from Australia, partly because of all these free trade policies that's been put in place. Okay, let me go back. However, we're still facing quite a lot of food shortages recently, okay? Especially the left-hand side, I think it's your right-hand side on my left, there's 2 pictures, actually shows because of COVID-19 and because of the impact on the supply chain and also because of panic buying, how our supermarket, the shelves just gone empty, people stockpiling, resulting in food shortages. On the right-hand side are then impacts of food shortages resulting from climate change, for example, drought, forest fire, etc., etc. Just to elaborate a bit more, don't worry, don't fall asleep, keep eating your lunch. I'm just going to talk very quickly in terms of the root causes of food security. We'll breeze this by. Obviously, poverty, war, corruption will result in uneven distribution of food. As we know in Ukraine, a very alive and living examples. And my heart goes out to our friends in Ukraine. And obviously, barriers to trade, between countries. Again, COVID-19 is a very good example how the closing of borders actually impact on food supply and food security. I have a friend who is now, living in Shanghai. News been going around. There are plenty of food available. People want to supply the Shanghainese with food. However, because of the closure of, the highways and the entry into the different living compounds, and as a result, people could not get food. There are also insufficient agricultural development. Some parts of the world are more developing, and as a result, the agriculture sector is less developed, resulting in less food being produced. The rising food prices are also happening because of population growth. In places like Africa and other parts of Southeast Asia, population growth actually, when there's higher demand, you have more mouths to feed. With constant supply of food, obviously, there's going to be an increase in prices because of the increases in demand. Production shortfall, again, most likely due to climatic changes, weather changes. For example, I'm staring out now, these few days have been quite interesting. Lots of rain, lots of thunderstorm, lots of flash floods in Singapore. Can you imagine in a food producing country, sudden rain, sudden flooding, obviously then your production will be affected. There's also a change in consumption pattern as we grow richer, I mean, in the past, we don't get to eat beef every day, but today, because of the increase in affluence, in the living standards, in the income level that we have, we're able to purchase more high-class products such as beef, lamb, or even like fresh grade, flown in sashimi from Japan, etc., etc. And all these will have an impact in our food security as well. And finally, speculation, deregulation, another very good example. When the announcement of COVID-19 lockdown in China, it hasn't happened yet, but because of speculation, people already going out, stocking up food, and as a result, resulting in food insecurity for some other parts of the population. I mentioned quite a lot about, climatic change, natural disaster, etc. These are things that we cannot control. And pandemic really came, the COVID-19 is a very, very good example that these are things that we cannot control, but have huge impact in terms of our food supply and food security. As you can see, I mentioned droughts, floods earlier, climate change as well, resulting loss of productive farmland, depletion of seed stocks, loss of biodiversity, and all these things, the very changing climatic events resulting in farmers no longer know when to plant and when not to plant because, of these changing climatic events. I'm not going to go into this whole climate change argument if it's, caused by humans or not, but I believe it is having an impact on our food supply of the world. Other changes, obviously, changing family structures. I'm a working mom myself. So as a result, we have higher, with double income, we're able to eat out more. And as a result, probably better quality food as well. One thing that I was just discussing with colleagues in this room before this recording is that, COVID-19 actually have quite huge impact in terms of sustainable eating. Why? Because COVID-19, in fact, as a result, we use a lot more plastics, a lot more takeaway, and it is not sustainable in the long run. And obviously with mass communication and media advertising, with better food information, a lot of us are also becoming or going to become, I don't know, vegan, we become pescatarian and looking more for organic food. And all these will have an impact in terms of food security because we are looking for different kinds of food now in terms of our diet. We've been talking about changes, factors, impacting on food security. Now let us go a bit into the supply side in terms of production. And one keyword when we want to talk about sustainable eating, then obviously it has to start right at the beginning. What about production? What about agriculture? Yeah. Agriculture is really important because in the world, over 1 million people relied on agriculture for livelihood. And it has been changing a lot with a lot of, new technologies such as genetically modified food, lots of mechanization of food production. We learn about how to use chemicals and fertilizers to improve production. There's a huge investment in biotechnology and government subsidies into the agricultural sector, resulting in higher food production and supply. However, all these have impacts too, then you get erosion, contaminated soil and water resources, loss of biodiversity, deforestation, etc., etc. Yeah. So you see, when we want to talk about sustainable eating, we have to start at sustainable agriculture, which is right at the beginning of the whole supply chain, which is really important. And it's not just about prices. It's not just about quality or quantity of production. It is also about the quality because as we all know, if you tinker too much into food production, there will be food safety issues, such as recently there's a lot of research into cell-based protein, into genetically modified meat and into protein-based meat. So there needs to be very high standard of food safety, ethics, etc., to make sure that it's safe for consumption for human beings. Let's go very quickly now into food loss and food waste. I think this is really relevant to our daily practices, very relevant to our eating habits. So just a very quick definition in terms of what is food loss. Food loss is a decrease in the quantity or quality of food resulting from decisions and actions by food suppliers. Okay, there's a difference between the first and the second definition, and it's underlined. Food suppliers in the first one in the food chain, but it is excluding retailer, food services provider, and consumers. Okay. The second part, food waste, then refers to the decrease in the quantity, quality of food resulting from decisions and actions by retailers, food services providers, and consumers. So theoretically, your action and my action in terms of what we want to buy, how much we can consume, things we cannot consume, and we throw it away is considered food waste. Anything that, for example, in a supermarket, because of the expiry date or the goodbye date, best buy dates, and as a result, the supermarket throw away into the bin because of that, that is called food loss. So two very different concepts, right? One is by retailers, suppliers, sorry, not retailers, but the suppliers. But one, sorry, let me just clarify. Food suppliers is not a supermarket. Sorry, I apologize. It's actually the production line, for example, from the farm to the packaging part. Yeah, when the packages finishes, that goes to the supermarket, then it's food waste. Apologies, I was too fast in terms of my explanation. How much food waste is happening each year? As you can see from the stats on this slide, a third of the food produced, approximately 1.3 billion tons, are lost or wasted. And it is very interesting is that consumer in rich countries, I think we are one of the rich countries in the world, we are developed countries, wasted almost as much food as the entire food production of the sub-Saharan Africa, which is about 230 million tons, and that's a lot. And with this 230 million tons, it's enough to feed 870 million people. And this number is very mind-blowing in terms of how much food we're just throwing away into, you know, the dumps and into the incinerators. Now, just come back a bit to the home. What about the Singapore story in terms of what we're doing about food, what we're doing about waste, and how our, you know, production and food security is playing out at our home landscape? I think all of us would be very, very familiar that the Singapore government, especially the Singapore Food Agency, is driving this huge initiative. It's called 30 by 30. Yeah, it's to produce 30% of our food by year 2030. And a lot of it, you know, it's not just about production, but there's also this focus about food loss and food waste. As you can see very clearly, I think I love these posters. It is very contextualized, very local. You know, in fact, it uses a nasi lemak. I hope some of you are actually eating nasi lemak now. It's making me looking at it very hungry. You can see that, you know, in terms of food waste and food loss, we wasted amount of 342 million, you know, of food every year, which is quite dramatic, isn't it? And each household actually wasted 258 average, yeah, annually per household. What does it mean? It means that you are wasting 68 million plates of nasi lemak every year. And that's just mind-blowing. I'm feeling my heart is aching because of all this nasi lemak that's going down the drain, which is quite, you know, a lot in that sense. And then on our right-hand side, we have a consumer survey in terms of our attitude towards food wastage. And you can look at it carefully on the screen, but I'm just going to draw your attention to one very interesting fact is that, you know, 8 in 10 of us are bothered when uneaten food is thrown away. So in fact, we are very cautious. You know, we know that, you know, we should not waste food and should not throw it away because 8 in 10 people felt bad if we have to throw food away. So it means we have the right attitude. It's just really then how are we changing perhaps our purchasing habits? What do we do in the supermarket? You know, there's a little trick, never shop when you're hungry because you tend to fill up your shopping carts very quickly. buying foods that you will not eat or unhealthy food. So there are little things that you can do to reduce food wastage, ranging from shopping to preparing food to storage, etc., etc. And Singapore, again, more stats just to get it grounded in the Singapore context. You know, locally in 2018, we only produced 13% of our vegetables, 9% of our fish, and 24% of our eggs. Okay, so that's why we have the 30 by 30 policy or initiative by SFA, which is, I think, is great. It is really important with increasing supply chain challenges as well that we see are rising out of COVID-19, the lack of shipping containers, you know, and this is going to become more a bigger issue every day. So what are the challenges in terms of trying to secure food from Singapore? Obviously, you know, when there are diseases that occurs during food production, then that will reduce the food supply. One of the very good things that James Cook University is doing is, in fact, we are really investigating and researching into diseases in the fishes in terms of aquaculture. We're trying to find new vaccines, new genetics, you know, genetically improve fishes species to make sure that they are resistant to diseases as well. So those are very important issues that we are trying to investigate, you know, in order to resolve some of the social issues in terms of food security. Supply chain, as I mentioned, very important, you know, in terms of what COVID-19 is wreaking havoc in terms of our supply chain. Political issues, again, very important. In some parts of the world, for example, Ukraine is a very good example again. It is one of the biggest wheat baskets of the world. And because of the political challenges now in Ukraine, the war with Russia, what we are seeing is that the increase in prices in terms of wheat products, because even if they are producing, I mean, I'm sorry, it's very disheartening to say a lot of those farms have been destroyed by the war. But even if there is production, you know, there is no way that we can transport them out of Ukraine to the rest of the world. And as a result, you know, prices are increasing because of the reduction in the supply. Other environmental challenges, obviously, you know, with climate change, again, these are quite vital issues that will impact on food security. Singapore, however, producing not a lot of fish, not a lot of vegetables, you know, we are still one of the most, in fact, we are the most food secure country in the world. And one question that pops to our mind is, how do we do it? You know, how do we manage? As you can see from the chart, we are 87.4 and ranking the top in terms of affordability, which is very important. It means that we can buy the food with our income level. The availability means, you know, it's widely available. It's not just very selectively. Food safety and food quality as well in 2019. How do we do it? I have to give it to Singapore partly because, you know, it is very strategic in terms of trying to secure food for Singapore. And it knew right from the start, because of our lack of land mass, you know, a very small population compared to the rest of the world, not a lot of land. And as a result, trade became the focus of our food security. Okay, so you can see from the chart, you know, most of Singapore produce only, you know, 10 million kilograms per year, but a lot of it, in fact, out of 10.8 million kilograms that we produce in terms of leafy vegetables, we import 81.5 million kilograms. So it's eightfold. Yeah, we import 8 times more food than we produce, which is quite mind-blowing. And fish is even more than 8-fold. I think that's, I'm not very good with math, but I think that's almost like 20 times that we produce in Singapore. And these are the beautiful map on your right. On my right is actually the different places that we import different products from. I mean, I personally love Norwegian salmon. I believe a lot of us here, you know, love Norwegian salmon as well. So we do import different produce from different countries, different part of the world. So, as I mentioned, 30 by 30, there's 3 food basket campaign that's been put forward by the SFA. First is to diversify import sources. Second is to grow local. And third is to grow overseas, meaning that investing in overseas farms and have agreements with them to make sure that they constantly supply us in terms of the food supplies and production. One thing that's happening in terms of grow local in Singapore and very, very rapidly as well is vertical farming. And we're going to show you a video now. It's only 3 minutes. Enjoy it. And it's very interesting. We will now bring you out to the vertical aquaculture farms and see what are some of the entrepreneurs and very innovative businesses in Singapore has been doing in terms of food security for Singapore. A video, please. Thank you.
Agriculture, the biggest industry in the world.
But by 2050, it's said that global food production will have to double in order to feed all the people on the planet.
Brand ambassadors.
Organizations,
A challenge that's grabbing the world's attention, from startups eager to close the food gap to big-time investors who believe the industry is ripe for change. Investments in agri-food tech grew $10 billion in 2017, up 29% from the year before. Government agencies like the Agri-Food and Veterinary Authority of Singapore have also been sowing seeds to bolster food security.
They actually advise us on our scalability, how are we going to build this more intensively in a closed environment. So they're actually giving a lot of grants now to farms that are able to scale up.
Eric Ng built the first vertical fish farm in Singapore. From 6 ponds, he plans to scale up production to 96 by 2020 by building this $52 million mega farm.
In Singapore, our land is expensive. We need to build this with a smaller footprint to produce more. So to go into intensive farming, I think sustainable farming is the only way to go.
Vertical farming is blooming in Singapore, growing from 12 farms in 2016 to 34 in 2018, according to AVA.
With inside of a building, the environments are typically the same. What actually happened when we first went out and spoke with the AVA about taking a space inside of a building, that was very new for them. So the biggest challenge that we had was finding ways to rewrite the policies that would enable us to grow inside of this building.
AVA is also encouraging players to test the waters overseas.
We're hoping that we can build more satellites overseas and we can build this model into urban cities, closer to the community, the consumers. So for Japan, we already have a farm in Hiroshima. Brunei, we are looking into it now, and we'll be doing an expansion in Brunei as well.
Vertical farming is going to be a supplement to all farming systems, and it will really decentralize the food value chain as it's seen today. Because we can grow the impossible crops locally, vertical farms will be used to bring those products that can't be grown into markets so communities can have great products like temperate products all year round. And then we can work with the outdoor farmers to help them integrate smart technology, very bespoke to their footprints, to help them optimize their farming.
Hi, I'm Christine Tan, and thanks for watching.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video. I think CNBC, thank you very much, has done a great job in terms of being ahead of the curve and do a very short video on the vertical farms. As you recognize, I believe Benjamin, who's the CEO for Sustainer, you will see their products in NTUC, mostly in salads and different vegetables. So these are the very innovative and progressive companies who are coming up with new ways of increasing production using the very limited land space that we have in Singapore. Okay, so now very quickly, just out of curiosity again, because I always like to interject a very boring Zoom session lecture with many questions and relatable questions. So I have one for you now, is that where do you usually shop? Okay, do you shop in a market, a wet market, like what I do on every Sunday at Whampoa Market? I stay very near there, and it's a beautiful, very vibrant, lots of produce market. Or do you shop at a fair price, NTUC or cold storage, a large supply chain of food produce that's distributed to many different locations throughout Singapore every day? Or do you shop from Shopee more? I'm not a promoter of Shopee, I should ask them for, but Lazada, Shopee, do you shop from their supermarket as well? Because online shopping seems to become more and more popular, especially with the younger generation, where it's much easier to just order online and get them delivered at your own convenience. And then what kind of food do you shop? I guess that's really important. Again, before we were recording, we started recording this. I had a chat with colleagues in the room as well. And we're talking about labels. Labels are it can be very confusing, but sometimes very informative, yeah? And with the changing consumption patterns of households in Singapore as well, more and more are looking towards healthier food, right? Organic food. So how do you recognize what is an organic food versus lower GI, etc., etc.? I did a very quick research on the internet, and these are some of the labels that I can see that actually helps to identify the different type of food in terms of their production. For example, you have Green Label Singapore, you have USDA, which is America's organic sale. Other ways, you don't really have any certification, but you just put on your label like the sorghum, organic sorghum, etc., etc. And Singapore, more popular is this healthier choice. I believe is by MOH, which is quite informative because it tells you, what is a good produce to buy, ranging from lower GI to higher grains to whole grains and lower in sugar, etc., etc. These are really, really useful. But however, just to let you know, it's very interesting because in Singapore, there is no one certified organic, agency that say, yes, this produce is in fact organically produced, So it is really by a trust system, unlike places like America where you have organic, sales saying that this is definitely organic and you're buying a safe product. Oops, I'm ahead of the game. I already said the answer. Is there an organic certification agency in Singapore? And the answer is no. Yeah. So now let's just, I think everybody would most interested to find out from this, brown bag, looking at your food, your lunch now you're eating into your lunch box. What can you take away from sustainable consumption? We as consumers, what can we do? Because whatever we consume, it will have an environmental footprint. It will have an impact on the earth, and it will have an impact on the food supply and food security of not just Singapore, but the whole world. Just to give you a very simple example, in terms, I'm going to introduce this concept very quickly. It's called foot miles. If you have your lunchbox in front of you now, have a look and ask yourself, how many of those items in your lunchbox are in fact imported into Singapore? Okay. Have a look and count them and try to guess where they come from. I reckon perhaps half of it are from Malaysia if you're a vegetarian, in terms of your vegetables, fresh vegetables are transported from Malaysia to Singapore. If you love blueberries and have blueberries in your lunchbox now, it's probably from Chile, if not South Africa. Took a plane all the way from South Africa into Singapore. Apples, it might be Fuji, Japan apples, or it might be made in China, grown in China apples. Again, air freight into Singapore because it is a perishable. It can't take the ship, which takes about 3 months to get to Singapore. So as a result, your bowl of your plate of lunch today probably has a very high carbon footprint in terms of the transportation they have taken from their source, production source into Singapore to be onto your plate. So, that's where we start to really think about what we consume actually has an impact on the environment. So what do we do? Are we going to stop eating blueberries and strawberries? No, don't panic. I'm not advocating that. My daughters love blueberries as well, so no problem with eating what you like and love, but perhaps a little bit more reflection and consciousness into selecting fruit produce would be very useful. So look for locally produced goods and seasonal food. One of the things that seasonal fruits are the best. For example, now we were just talking about durians recently, very interesting. In my time, okay, don't ask me how I am, but in my time when I was young, you only get durian July, August, summer period, where a durian, it could be like as cheap as 50 cents, and they're fantastic. Beautiful taste, really good value, right? And you buy one whole big basket and eat till you puke kind of feeling, But today, you walk into Geylang, there's a lot of those durian stores there. You can buy durian in December. You can buy durian in January. You can buy durian in October. You can buy durian for Christmas dinner if you want. Taste is different, more expensive. You know why? Partly it's not seasonally produced anymore. It is very much genetically modified for some species. So as a result, you don't get the value and you don't get the taste, the real natural production cycle of a durian in that sense. So go for seasonal food, go for seasonal fruits. Yeah, certain seasons, comes to produce different products, etc., etc. So that's very important. Try to become a locavore as well. So, eat within 100 miles radius. I know Singapore is very easy, we cheat, like 100 miles. 1 kilometer is already Malaysia. So we are all locavores in some sense. Yeah, but I was working in China before this and UK, and 100 miles radius is really what we call locavore. So you try to buy produce from farms that we are within 100 miles radius from you. So perhaps the lesson to take away here is try to buy more Malaysian products, more Indonesian products, because they have less miles to travel to Singapore, and as a result, more sustainable in that sense. For local enterprise, obviously, if you invest in local foods or you buy local food, for example, those that have been shown in the video earlier, which means then these local companies, they will be more willing to reinvest money back into the local economies, by employment, add-on services as well. So it does have a spill-on effect. It's not just about food. When you buy locally produced food, it's also about reinvesting into the local economy, which has, a win-win situation in that sense. So perhaps, you also need to think in terms of from wet markets, go for wet markets instead of supermarkets. Again, we have to admit a lot of the supermarkets, they tend to secure food from further destinations into the supermarkets, while wet markets really more locally source production in that sense. The others, I believe a lot of us has been doing it, doggy bags, the 3 R's, bring your own container when tapaoing. So not just talking about food in terms of food security, but I'm talking about sustainable eating. As we talked about earlier, COVID-19 has a huge impact in terms of sustainable eating with the increasing amount of plastics that we are using, the plastic containers, etc., etc. So we really need to be more cautious in terms of when we trying to tapao, can we bring our own container? If not, then why not eat there? It's good to spend some time away from your work desk or from your home and get some fresh air. Grow your own food is a big thing now in Singapore. I just came back to Singapore on the 1st of September last year. And it was really, really, I'm very happy to see a lot of community gardens. People start to grow their own food. There is this huge promotion towards try a little bit, little pots, things like that. Because I think it's really important to know where food come from and how it's being grown, because then it makes us realize that it is quite hard work, and wasting food might not be a good option in that sense, because you do feel now, you know, where it comes from. In fact, my partner, you know, he's part of the community garden. We've been growing basil, soya bean, lots of herbs, for example, rosemary, mint, thyme. Now he's trying to grow a lemon tree, you know, because we use lemon every day. He said, oh, you know what? I'm just going to grow a lemon tree. I say, lemon is not really indigenous to Singapore, but don't worry. Now they have a species that's, you know, it's a miniature that you can have lemon in a very short period of time. And I can tell you, you know, eating your own harvest food has quite a different feeling from buying it from a supermarket and getting it out from the packages, because you sort of connect with the food, which is very interesting. Last but not least, alternative food choices. For example, plant-based food, impossible meat. I think we all know recently it's so big, you know, in terms of impossible meat, protein-based, soya-based kind of meat has been in vogue, you know, and people ask me, why are we going for all these soya bean-based or protein-based meat in that sense? And one of the biggest challenges, because when we have the production of beef, in fact, emits a lot of methane because of their the digestive system, and as a result, methane is one of the most not very good green gases that actually damages our ozone, etc., and resulting in climatic changes. So that's why people are moving towards vegan and impossible meat, to make sure that our consumption patterns have less environmental impact in that sense. Okay, so this is a very nice poster. I keep emphasizing, you know, we as consumers, what can we do in terms of sustainable consumption? So this poster is very, very good in terms of actions. What can we do to reduce food waste? Okay, in terms of how we can do. Obviously, cost is one of the highest factor, 93%, again, from the consumer survey. But interestingly, I believe Singaporeans are becoming more environmentally cautious, because you see 92% that actually says that, you know, we do it for the environment. Yes, cost is a big thing. However, I think as we are more aware of our environmental impact, you know, in terms of our consumption, we are becoming, you know, we are taking real actions in terms of changing our consumption pattern, our eating pattern, our purchasing pattern, to ensure that we think before we buy that produce. Yeah. And I'm very pleased that, our Minister Desmond Lee recently announced, you know, that NTUC, is that right? Plastic produce, you have to pay to get plastic bags from NTUC now, which I'm very, very impressed in that sense. I mean, although we are a bit slower in terms of the curve compared to other developed countries, but we are doing something, and I hope we will garner some kind of momentum to have more concrete action in terms of sustainable consumption and food security. Almost coming to the end. Our relationship with food, yeah. So I bet this is the most important slide at the end of it, is that we need to be more thoughtful in terms of our relationship with food. Okay, we have to buy it with thought. We have to cook it with care. We have to use less wheat and meat. Try to buy local produce. Serve just enough and use what is left. And the most important thing, don't waste it. I'll share a personal experience with you. I hate eating leftovers. When I'm young, I guess our culture, you know, we don't really like leftover food. It's not very good if you put it in the fridge, trying to reheat it, you know, it's not very tasty. But increasingly, it's quite important. And I mean, you know, eating leftovers is just as good if you know how to store it properly and reheat it properly. So don't waste it, and it is as good today as yesterday. Okay, and with that, I would like to invite all of you now to put your questions into the Q&A box, and I'll try to answer as many as I can. But in the meantime, I'll pass it to my colleague, David. I'll pass it to you to talk a little bit before, I look through the questions and pick out the ones that I would like to answer. David, please. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Professor May. So hi, everyone. My name is David from James Cook University. So allow me to share a little bit more information about James Cook University while you are thinking of question to put in the Q&A. So allow me to share my screen quickly. Okay, once again, hope every one of you enjoy the brown bag lecture by Professor May. So allow me to share James Cook University with you. So we have a local campus in Singapore and we are ranked top 300 university worldwide. This is some of JCU recognition and support that we give to the society. So this is where our campus is located at Sims Drive. And some of the campus pictures, facilities, as well as service for you to have a visual look. Okay, as a full-fledged university, we do have a lot of clubs and societies for full-time students as well as part-time students to join in to enjoy the university life again. Okay, this is our psychology facilities lab, just for your information. And this is a snapshot of our academics in JCU. If you take a quick snapshot, basically you can see all our full-time lecturers are all PhD holders, and you can engage them in the campus. Okay, let me share something that is interesting from QS. Environmental science courses from James Cook University are recently ranked among the top 100 in the world. And this is the program that we have for our environmental science leading to sustainability as well. So we do have our bachelor as well as our research degree in sustainability issue and environmental science. Okay, this is one of our new feature course just to share with everyone. It's called Master of Psychological Science. You don't need to have a bachelor in psychology to start, but you will probably need to complete a bridging before you continue to this master's. This course is developed because of the COVID that pushed every companies into transformation of their operational workflow. So this course is suitable for leaders and people that are involved heavily in organizational transformation. Okay, so my department is continuing education. So we offer various part-time programs across counseling, psychology, early childhood, and of course, environmental science. So please take probably about 10 seconds if you wish to connect with us. This is my email, my contact number, as well as a QR code available for you to connect with us if you are interested to find out any of our courses. With that, thank you so much to listen to me for these few minutes, and I hope every one of you can join our next brown bag session brought to you by James Cook University on 22nd April. The topic will be on applying clinical psychology in uncertain times by Professor Nigel. With that, I will hand back over to Professor May to answer the Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, David, for telling the audience a little bit about JCUS in terms of what we do. I have lots of questions, so exciting. You know, you're just as excited as I am, okay? So I'm just gonna go through them slowly and try to answer as many as possible. Some of you has actually put in the chat box too, in terms of some questions. It would be easier if you try to transplant them into the Q&A, because then I can just look at one screen instead of multiple, and it makes it easier. So very quickly, I'm going to answer Leonora's main question, which is the first one. How can we encourage local farms to use kitchen waste compost to be gathered by government? It is very interesting. Then she asked a second question again. Why is it that Singapore does not collect food waste? Okay, this is very interesting. I worked in China for 12 years. And food waste is one of the main things that they collect. So they come in a truck and to all the canteens and restaurants and collect the food waste and then send it to guess where? Pig farms, you know, and feed it to the the pigs because they see it as a very good way of recycling food waste. Singapore, it is not happening. Okay, partly I believe it can be quite messy. We're trying to recycle our different produce into different containers. And for food waste, it's very, very challenging because if you have food waste that are not secured properly or not disposed properly, it will result in rodents, rats, cockroaches, insects. So I think at this moment, because of the way Singapore we live in a very high-rise buildings, it's very challenging to collect food waste unless you and me, you know, we collect our food waste in a bucket and go down to a downstairs, put it into a container, make sure it's very well secured, and then there needs to be a company who is going to collect the food waste almost immediately, if not daily, because as we again know, Singapore is very hot and humid. You don't want the next person to open up and you're like, oh my God, there's maggots and the smell is horrendous. There's fish and crabs and prawns and seafood. So as a result, it is not easy in Singapore. However, it does not stop us from doing it ourselves. In my household, I cook every day. Yeah, I use a lot of vegetables. So obviously, a lot of pails, a lot of those food waste. I collect them, and my partner will bring it down to his communal garden. He started a compost, and this links to other questions also in some of the Q&A. He managed to, in China, again, we have our own compost. So there are certain ways of doing it. It's quite easy. The main thing is that in the compost, you cannot put cooked food waste in it. You need to put fresh food waste in it. So like peels, you know, potato peels, vegetables that you don't use, like the roots, etc., banana skins. Those, yes, you can put it into the compost, and within 2 to 3 months, it will disintegrate and you can use that as the soil for your communal garden. So that's a very good way of using food waste in terms of kitchen waste compost. Okay. So Leonora, I hope I answered 2 of your questions. Very quickly, what is the most common produced food due to it being imported? It depends on what you mean, Muhammad Shafaruddin. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. It really depends. Are you talking about food mounds or are you talking about the whole production? If you really want to calculate carbon, it's a very complex issue here because carbon credits, carbon calculation, sometimes it goes like right from the beginning when a calf is born, the feed that's been used, transported to the farm to feed the cows, to then the cows being transported to the butchery. And so it is very complex in that sense, in the sense that if you want to talk about most carbon produced food. And then on top of that, you have the food mounds that used to transport this food as well when it's being imported into Singapore. So I don't have the right answer here, the one answer here, because it really depends on your calculation and it depends on the destination of the production place. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Going to the next question, Justin. Ooh, that's a long one. Can I just ask, does the audience are able to read the questions? Fine, that's good. So I won't repeat the question. Let me just consumer still value in traditional farming. It seems policy. Yes, it's true that Singapore government focuses very much on technology to increase production, reducing land allocation. Yes. Okay, so now I'm not trying to be the government, but I'm trying to think like them and to answer this question. Singapore is already very space limited, right? So obviously you cannot use the traditional way of farming to produce enough food for Singaporeans. And don't forget, we have 6 million on a very, very small land scale, okay? So the traditional methods will not work. That's why you need technology. Or if not, then you set up farms in countries which have lots of land the traditional way and then transport them into Singapore. So there is no real, again, I'm sorry, I'm a social scientist. I don't like to give answers. I like to make you think a little bit more. Is that, you know, it's not easy for the government to start up a traditional way of organic farming in that sense, partly because of the land restriction. However, it doesn't mean that we could not have organic farming the vertical way in that sense, or hydroponic. So, and you're right, you're absolutely right. Taste can be different between organic and non-organic. And in fact, I have friends who told me who are into food sciences, they say, in fact, taste can be different between using soil and hydroponics as well. And it's true, because hydroponic, you only use water. Soil, in fact, has a lot of, you know, nutrients, chemicals, you know, that actually helps to flavor, if not add value to the taste of the vegetables or trees that you've been cultivating. So this is my very short answer to your very long question. And obviously we can talk about this, you know, a lot more, but I'll just very quickly move on to the next question. Thank you, CP Tang. Would the bulk of food waste come from F&B? I think so. You're right, because we do, I mean, we do buy food, but you know, Singapore, we live in a very small HDB flat, right? You cannot have a huge fridge, and a lot of the food waste, they do come from retail, and you'd be surprised, a lot of the food waste come from supermarket as well, because of the best by date, best before date, use by date, and they just throw it out, you know. And that's why there's a worldwide campaign now trying to encourage supermarkets to donate all of their food, you know, that already passed by the best by date. Yeah, best by date means you still can use it. It's just it's the best before this date. It doesn't mean it's expired this date. So there's a difference again. You know, colleagues or friends, when you go out to supermarket, when you look at the best by date, don't think that that's the date you have to throw away if you don't use it by that date. Okay, so there's a difference. Yeah. So yes, supermarkets are very important. Second question, use tree oil, repairs torn plastic bag so that I can recycle. However, I have a dilemma, not used in basket. And yes, I agree. CP, I totally agree. You know, again, this is very much because of how we live in Singapore. We use plastic bags partly because that's how we throw our garbage. We bag them up, we go outside, we open the chute and we throw it into the garbage bag, the rubbish chute. There is no way we can escape plastic. It is true, okay? If you look around, colleagues, just friends, just look around you now. Surrounding you are all plastics. Even the glasses I'm using is all plastic. You know, it's impossible not to have plastic in your life, okay? But couple of things. One-use plastic, not encouraged, okay? Because those are the biggest impact. That's why I still say using a recycled plastic bag that you bought things from NTUC to rebag your garbage is better than just throw away the garbage bag for nothing. Okay, so always think of recycling, reusing. Obviously, there's a lifespan to how much you can use plastic. I have a friend, again, scientific. I have a friend who used a water bottle, yeah? She fills up with this water bottle, like she used it for 3 months, just topping it up with you know, those tap water and things like that. But scientifically, you shouldn't reuse it more than a couple of weeks because it does disintegrate. And for health purposes, in fact, if you use it multiple times, the plastic will actually, you know, disintegrate and go into the water that you're drinking. That's why try not to use this plastic by buying, show me that container, please. By using this plastic, which is much better because then this is not easily it doesn't dissolve or disintegrate into your water. It is made for the purpose. So it's very important in terms of the plastic that you choose and the way you reuse and recycle as well. Okay, I hope I answered your question. Thank you very much, Daryl. Oh my God, the question keeps coming and it's quite long. Yes, food security in Singapore. Yes, supply chain issue. Yes, I agree. Okay, So Daryl is saying that if we reduce consumption means then suppliers don't find, the benefits of bringing food into Singapore. And as a result, reducing our food security as well. Chicken and egg, right? It's a chicken and egg, right? It's true. Yes, if there is no demand, then there's no supply. True. I agree with you. However, sometimes we need to look at our demand. We can demand for produce that has less footprint. We can demand for more nearer produce as well. So for example, again, I'm a Singaporean, I'm not Malaysian. I'm not going to do this debate saying that, the Singapore-Malaysia rivalry. But because Singapore is nearer to Malaysia compared to other parts of the world, then obviously purchasing food from Malaysia makes more sense. Still very much the supply chain, still very much food trade and everything. It is just how far do we go in terms of food supply. Okay, so that's one thing that's quite important. Let me just I also study green food supply chain as well. So it is more complex of just saying supply and demand from which location. Is also about the way they transport and different ways they've been put in place to ensure that it's greener than in the past. And that's why sometimes this is too complex. Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3, carbon reduction. This is all this very high level climate change talk. But if you really want to go that way, then you can even go down to the supply chain to look at which supplier is greener. So then you have less footprint in terms of the food consumption. Okay, back to Lenora. Lenora is a very, very active person in this Q&A, which is great. I think you are very keen on this topic. How other countries are managing these challenges. I guess, as I mentioned earlier, I was staying in China. China did a very good thing. I believe you're talking about food waste and food compost again. It really depends on the different contexts, right? China is doing very well. Australia, Canada, my partner is from Canada. In fact, in Canada, the way of they sorting out their waste is even more complex. Singapore, you just one big garbage bag throw into the chute. If you have recycle, you bring it down to the Sembcorp, the blue thing, and you're trying to throw it in, right? Regardless, paper, bottles, etc. In Canada, places like that, they have 4 boxes. It's even more detailed, and you keep the food waste in your house. Okay, they have a very specific collection time. So you are managing, the smell, everything within your house. But people do it because of environment, purpose and sustainability. So some countries manage to do it, but at the end of the day, it depends on the citizens. Do you want to do it? Because I believe Singapore government is very open and receptive to ideas of sorting into 4 boxes. But if it's not working and people like you and me, we think it's too much trouble, then obviously it will not work, right? It will not work in that sense. Okay, Sun Heng, food waste always come with packaging. Yeah, it's true. Yes. So that's why I go to wet market. You compare, you go wet market, you see the auntie take one newspaper, wrap. Now cannot use newspaper lah. They say got lead and all those nonsense. But now where got people use lead? So they use newspaper, they wrap, and then they throw 15 vegetables into one plastic bag. Okay, go, right? But you go NTUC, you buy one nicely packed, cold storage, buy nicely packed, then you tear. It's also, big chains. Yeah, they have very nice packaging, very clean. But in fact, you're generating more waste. I would like to share another story. I mean, do you know one of the most, I went to Japan, I cannot take it. I just cannot take it. I have to unwrap 5 wrappers to get my strawberry. In Japan, it's very hygiene, right? And very clean. So they open one, then there's another layer. Then after that, you have nice wrapping paper, like wax paper, you open. And then you look at the wrappings, it's more than the strawberry you bought. So I think pros and cons, right? So it's really about, how do we view cleanliness versus the trade-off versus, sustainability and packaging. So, okay, Mohammed, you're back again. Good. Yes, I lived in China for 12 years. Can you believe that? I just came back to Singapore 1st of September. So what's the difference in wastage compared to here? How is the Chinese government tackling? Okay, China is very interesting. China, in fact, I don't see them a lot now in Singapore, but before I left, I see a lot of them, good and bad. They are the Kalanguni men. Do you remember those people? The Kalanguni people, the auntie, uncle with a trolley going around collecting tin cans, collecting boxes. You know, in Singapore, we don't see a lot of them now here. But you know what? In the past, when I was in Singapore 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I look up to these Kalanguni men because I think they are the best thing for recycling. They are the savior. They really look at things to recycle, reuse, resell, etc., etc. You still get a few of them, but not a lot. Places like China, a lot of Kalanguni men. In fact, I just share another very funny story. I was drinking a can of beer. Yeah, I have this old man following me behind, waiting for me to finish the beer can so that he can collect it and bring it away and recycle and resell it. So it's different stroke for different folks. Correct now. But now nobody wants to be Kalanguni man here in Singapore because it's not a good job, right? True. So you see, it's quite challenging in that sense. Yeah. So very good. Quickly, thank you. Going next to Jude. Okay. How do we know which food are greener than others? Oh, complex. That's why we need labels, right? That's why some labels actually tell you where it's been produced. Some labels say that, you know, it's organic, which means then it's more sustainable. So labels are very important. Yeah. In Singapore, again, as I mentioned, there's no real organic certification agency. So it's a trust system. So that's the challenge. And a lot of the labels in Singapore are more about health rather than production and sustainability. So in Singapore, it's a bit challenging, but other places it's very clear. You can just look at, you know, the different labels from organic to low foot miles to within 100 miles radius. They have all those things, okay? Because they see it as a very good marketing strategy as well for them to promote sustainability and greener produce. Agnes. Oh, let me see. Too fast. Where are we now? Agnes is gone. No, Agnes is, let me see. Sorry, let me go back. Back, is it? Back to open. Okay, Agnes, sorry. Yes, love buffet. Yeah, I love buffet, but I haven't been to one yet. You know? Yes, okay. Wow, this one very challenging, you know. You're making me say something right, but my heart says something else, you know. We Singaporeans, we love buffets, right? I mean, and you're absolutely right. There's two things to buffets. One is that we as consumers, we take enough and do not waste food, right? And that's why you have institutions saying that more than 100 grams charge $20 because it's been happening. I think recently less because I think we're more civilized now. We don't really waste food that much. But I think the biggest waste come from the F&B establishment, right? Because they have to make sure there's a constant supply of food. Because people like you and me, if we go to the buffet table, if it's empty, we'll get angry, right? Then they have to bring out a whole new plate of food. So that's where the challenge is then how do the F&B establishment deal with the food waste? Obviously, if food waste get to be recycled, for example, again, JCU, we've been investigating how do we collect food waste, dry them, and make them into fish feed. So these are the technology that we need to constantly research, investigate, to find ways that actually helps to collect not just waste in terms of technology, but also companies who are willing to invest in it. Because don't forget, to go from hotels to collect the food waste, you need trucks, you need investment, you need resources. Is there a company out there willing to do that for the profit level? So these are the many different, you know, factors we have to consider when we talk about managing food waste. Agnes, again, I'm just trying to go through the question very quickly. So I hope that answers your question. Melanie, yes. Are there hackathons or events on food sustainability? I'm not aware of any at this moment, but if you think there's a demand, I'm sure JCUS would like to organize one, even for expat, because I think we JCU, we are a sustainability university. We believe this is really important. So if there is a demand, just send us an email. We'll make it happen. Thank you, Melody. Wei Sun, yes. Do you see the increased focus and investment? Oh, okay, wait. In alternative proteins, yes. Environmental good and bad. Yeah, I think this is a very interesting. I was waiting for this question to come up in terms of alternative proteins. Oh, big question. When you have new startups, right? Obviously, it's good for the economy. It's good for the investment. It's good for food security because you're finding other ways to ensure that our population are healthy, eating the right proteins, etc., etc. On the other hand, it's very much lab-based. Sometimes people call it. People worry about ethics and food safety. So could be a challenge in terms of uptake rate because of people concerned. But at the same time, we also have seemingly a lot of the younger generation, even the older generation, are moving towards vegetarian and vegan for health purposes. So I believe this is a very big sector. It will grow tremendously. It's not just about investments, it's not just about environmental impact, but it's also about health. So I believe the uptake rate will become higher and higher. So I think that's a very important area to look at. So if you're going looking for investments in food security, I bet that's one area that's going to grow tremendously. We're running out of time, I believe. So thank you very much. I hope I've tried to answer as many questions. You can easily Google me for my email address and ask me more questions if you have them. I believe it's really important for us as a nation, as a community, to do as much as we can for the environment in terms of our consumption pattern. So anytime, guys, if you have any more questions, just send me an email. And it's been lovely chatting with you guys. And I hope this barbecue lunch has been useful. Thank you and goodbye. I'll pass it back to Tammy. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. May, for your time and for the insightful sharing on how each and every one of us can play a part in food sustainability and consumption as well. So I hope you've enjoyed today's session and we'll now invite you to participate in our feedback poll. Please give us your honest feedback so that we can further improve on our brown bag series. The feedback poll should be popping up on your screen, so please take a few moments to share with us your observations. The responses are coming in, so we just wait for a few more seconds. Thank you very much for your feedback and for joining us today. This Brown Bag series is proudly brought to you by HeadHunt and James Cook University. We'll continue with our next session this Friday, 22nd of April, on the topic of Applying Clinical Psychology in Uncertain Times by James Cook University. Do sign up early on our website, masterclass.sg. With that, we'll end today's session. This is Tammy signing off. Have a great day. Bye.